Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into the world of research data management.
Ooh, exciting.
It is, specifically how it all works with clinical trials and quality improvement projects.
Yes, the world of groundbreaking discoveries and life-saving advancements.
Exactly. And it's really interesting to see how it all happens behind the scenes.
Right, all those policies and resources and the planning involved.
And I've heard there's a twist involving librarians.
Yes. Librarians are often the unsung heroes.
Oh, really? Okay, well, I'm intrigued. So our deep dive is based on a presentation given to the Medical Library Association.
No, very cool.
Yeah, it was back in 2016, so it may not be the absolute latest,
Right.
but I'm guessing those core principles still hold up.
Absolutely. The fundamentals of research data management, those stay pretty consistent.
Okay, good.
So it's like we might have fancy new gadgets now, but
Mm.
the underlying principles of security and ethics and reproducibility, those are timeless.
That makes sense. So today is all about learning those core principles.
Exactly. So you can navigate this world as things change and evolve.
Perfect.
And speaking of policies, the organizations that set the standards are a great place to start.
Right.
You've got the NIH, the NSF, and the FDA. They all have their own rules about data.
Whoa, acronyms already. Can we decode those for our listeners who might be new to this?
Of course. So the NIH is the National Institutes of Health.
Okay.
They're a huge U.S. government agency that funds a ton of medical research.
So they have a lot of influence on how data is managed.
Exactly. They hold the purse strings for a lot of groundbreaking science, so they set the rules.
Makes sense. What about the NSF?
That's the National Science Foundation. They support research across a bunch of different fields, not just medicine.
Okay, so they're like the NIH's broader science-loving cousin.
Uh-huh. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, and lastly, we have the FDA.
Right. The Food and Drug Administration, they focus on making sure that all our medications and medical devices are safe and effective.
Got it. So clinical trial data is super important to them.
Absolutely. It plays a massive role in their decision-making process.
Okay, big responsibility. So we have all these organizations with their own focus, but they all agree that data is critical.
Precisely.
And that's where those policies come in.
Right. They provide the framework for ethical and secure data management.
Okay, so I keep hearing these terms, transparency and reproducibility in the research world. What do they actually mean when it comes to data management?
Great question. Transparency means the research process is open. You clearly document everything so others can understand your findings.
So no hidden agendas or secret data.
Exactly.
Got it. And what about reproducibility?
Think of it like a recipe. If you follow the same steps, you should get the same results.
Okay, so other scientists should be able to use your data and get to the same conclusions.
Exactly. This helps to build trust in the findings.
Wow, this is eye-opening. I hadn't realized how much goes into managing research data.
It's a lot more than just crunching numbers, for sure.
It really is. So it's about making sure the whole process is robust and transparent and benefits the whole scientific community.
Absolutely. It's about building on a foundation of solid data practices.
Okay, so before we go any further, can we do a quick recap?
Sure.
So we're on a deep dive into research data management,
Right.
focusing on clinical trials and quality improvement projects.
Yes.
We've talked about the NIH, the NSF, and the FDA and their roles in data management.
Uh-huh.
And we've talked about the importance of transparency and reproducibility.
You got it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope. That's the gist. And remember, it's all about ensuring that research data is used ethically and responsibly.
Well said. Okay, ready to get digging deeper into this.
Let's do it. So diving deeper into this presentation,
Okay.
one of the first things that stood out was how it defines research data.
Oh, interesting. So what does it say? I mean, data's data, right? Like numbers and charts.
Well, it's more than that. This presentation says it's recorded information regardless of form or media.
Huh. Okay, so it could be like lab notebooks or audio recordings.
Exactly. Even physical samples could be considered data. Wow, I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty broad definition.
Right. And it's important because it shows just how much needs to be managed.
Yeah, it's not just about the final results.
No, it's everything. All the information gathered along the way.
Okay, so let's say I'm a researcher working on a clinical trial.
Okay.
What are some practical things I need to think about in terms of managing all this data?
Well, the presentation highlights a few key areas.
Okay.
And the first one is understanding who owns the data.
Oh, ownership.
Yeah,
That could get tricky.
it can. Is it the researcher?
Yeah.
The institution? The funding agency?
Right. Who gets to make the decisions about the data?
It really depends on the situation and the agreements in place.
Okay.
But generally, the principal investigator or PI of the project has primary stewardship of the data.
Stewardship. What does that mean exactly?
It means they're responsible for making sure the data is collected ethically, stored securely, and managed according to all the rules.
Wow. So being a PI is a big responsibility.
It is. They're like the data guardian.
I like that. The data guardian.
Exactly. And they also need to think about data management planning.
Data management planning, is that really necessary?
Oh, definitely. It can prevent so many problems later on.
Really?
Yeah, you have to think about what kind of data you'll collect, how you'll store it, who can access it, and what happens to it long term.
Okay, so it's like a roadmap for your data.
Exactly. And it helps make sure you're meeting all those requirements from the NIH, the NSF, and the FDA.
All right, all those organizations we talked about earlier. Okay, so what are some of those key policies researchers need to know about?
Well, one important one is the NIH Public Access Policy.
Okay, and what does that say?
Basically, any research funded by the NIH has to make those final manuscripts publicly available.
So everyone can access the findings?
Yes, no more hiding them behind those expensive paywalls.
I like that. It makes research more accessible.
Exactly. And the NIH also has a policy about data sharing.
Data sharing. So researchers have to share their data with others.
Yes. The idea is that data from publicly funded research should be a public good.
Huh. Okay, I can see the logic there.
Hmm.
It could help move science forward faster,
Right. But, of course, we need to protect sensitive information.
especially in clinical trials where you have patient data.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So data sharing policies often have ways to safeguard confidential information.
Like what?
Things like de-identification, where you remove any personal details from the data set.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about making data freely available.
No, it has to be done responsibly and ethically.
Right, protecting privacy is crucial.
Exactly. And there are also controlled access mechanisms where researchers have to apply to use the data and show they have the proper ethical approvals.
Wow, it's a lot to think about.
It is. Data management is complex.
But this deep dive is really helping me see the bigger picture.
Me too.
It's not just about following rules. It's about making sure research is done ethically, that the findings are reliable, and that the data benefits society.
You got it. It's about using research data to its full potential.
This has been so insightful. We've talked about the definition of research data, the importance of ownership and stewardship, the need for a data management plan, and some key policies from the NIH.
We've covered a lot.
What else should our listeners know about?
Well, let's talk about the specific challenges of managing data in clinical trials.
Good.
For example, the FDA has regulations about clinical trial registration and reporting.
Oh, right, clinical trials. Those are the gold standard for testing new treatments.
Exactly. And the FDA wants to ensure those trials are conducted safely and ethically.
So what do they require?
They require all clinical trials to be registered on a public database called clinicaltrials.gov.
Clinicaltrials.gov, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
What kind of information is on there?
All kinds. It has the purpose of the trial, the eligibility criteria, the interventions, and the results.
So you can see the outcomes of completed trials.
Yes, transparency is key.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like data management is this hidden foundation of scientific research.
It really is.
It ensures that research is rigorous and ethical.
And ultimately aims to improve human health and well-being.
This is incredible, and I'm sure there are resources out there to help researchers manage all of this.
You bet. Let's move on to part 3 and explore those resources.
All right, so we've talked about all these policies and regulations.
Yeah, a lot to take in.
But what about the researchers themselves? What resources do they have to help manage all this data?
That's a great question. And the good news is they don't have to do it alone.
Oh, good.
There's actually a ton of support out there,
Okay.
both within institutions and from external organizations.
So where should a researcher start looking for these resources?
Well, this presentation points to an unexpected source of librarians.
Librarians? Wait, I thought they just dealt with books.
Ha, that's a common misconception. These days, librarians can be invaluable partners for researchers.
Really?
Yeah, they often have expertise in data management planning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They can help you find relevant policies and resources and even connect you with tools for data storage analysis and sharing.
So they're like data guides.
Exactly. They can help you navigate this whole complex landscape.
That's awesome.
This presentation even suggests setting up a reference interview with a librarian.
A reference interview. What's that?
It's basically a brainstorming session. You sit down with the librarian, explain your project, and talk about your data management needs.
Okay.
And they can ask you questions to help you clarify your goals and identify any potential challenges.
So it's a personalized consultation.
Exactly. And beyond those human resources, there are also a bunch of online tools and platforms that can help.
Like what?
Well, one example is the DMP tool.
The what?
DMP tool. It's an online platform that provides templates and guidance for creating data management plans.
Oh, cool. So it helps you meet all the requirements from funders and institutions.
Exactly. It takes some of the guesswork out of it.
Yeah.
Then there are platforms like Dataverse Dryad Figshare and Zenodo.
Whoa, that's a lot of names.
I know, right? Each platform has its own strengths and features.
Okay, so how do you choose which one to use?
It depends on your needs. For example, Dataverse is popular with universities for hosting and sharing data.
Hmm.
But if you're really focused on long-term preservation and making your data easily citable, you might choose Dryad.
So it's all about finding the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And those librarians we talked about can help you choose the best fit.
This is great. But one thing I'm still wondering about is sensitive data. How do we protect that while still being transparent?
That's a really important question. The presentation does acknowledge that sharing sensitive data is a challenge.
So what can we do about it?
Well, there are strategies for sharing sensitive data responsibly.
Okay, like what?
De-identification is a common approach where you remove any personal details from the dataset.
Right, we talked about that earlier.
Exactly. You can also use controlled access mechanisms where researchers have to apply to use the data and show they have the proper ethical approvals.
So it's a balancing act.
It is. You need to make data accessible for research, but also protect privacy.
Wow, this deep dive has been so informative.
I agree. We've learned so much about the complex world of data management.
From defining research data to exploring all these policies and resources, it's been fascinating.
It really has.
So as we wrap up, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
Well, I think the most important thing is that data management is not just a chore. It's a crucial part of responsible and ethical research.
Absolutely.
By taking data management seriously, researchers can ensure that their work is reliable and impactful.
And that it ultimately benefits society.
Exactly.
So for our listeners out there, here's something to think about.
Mm.
Imagine you've just made a groundbreaking discovery in your research. How would you ensure that your data is managed ethically, securely, and shared effectively to make a real difference in the world?
It's a question worth pondering.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into research data management.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep diving deep.